There are fashions and mysteries, as in everything else. In the early 20th century, spiritualism was all the rage. In the 1950s, there was a veritable plague of flying saucers. Then, in the 1980s, reports of a strange new phenomenon came flooding in from the English countryside. Farmers were amazed, and usually annoyed, to discover huge circles of flattened corn. Each year, more and more crop circles were reported, 20 in 1986, 300 in 1989, and twice as many only a year later. Crop circles were turning up all over the world, here in the Far East, in the paddy fields. Soon, all the remaining crops were in danger of being flattened too, this time by investigators and inquisitive tourists.
From the controls of his plane, Busty Taylor has harvested more crop circles than anyone alive. Every day through the English summer, he scans the broad acres for fresh formations. Across the ancient chalk downs of Wessex and the fertile pastures of the Thames Valley, he's logged and photographed each puzzling pictogram. He's seen the whole range, from simple rings to ever more intricate designs, and he's garnered all the explanations, from mating hedgehogs to aerobatic helicopters, from extraterrestrial parking lots to unknown forces of the earth and wind. He's seen symbolism in King Arthur's West Country, mathematics wrangled in the Cambridge corn, and even humour to celebrate a cycle race. This man, George Pedley, has been haunted for nearly 30 years by something that he saw here. It happened deep in these isolated reed beds in Australia's tropical northeast. George believes he had a fleeting glimpse of a UFO taking off. The reed beds rang with an unearthly sound. The experience left a mark on him and on the landscape. At first, he thought the hissing sound was coming from his tractor.
I'm understanding over there beside the tractor, looking in and trying to convince myself that I didn't see it. But, well, it looked like a flying saucer object. Couldn't see it for very long. It just disappeared.
Moments later, a mat of reeds several feet thick shot to the surface of the lagoon. It looked like a gigantic nest. The reeds were flattened into a clockwise swirl 30 feet across. George called in his neighbour. Albert Panisi grows sugarcane on this land. He too was amazed by the circle, especially its strength. It was 2 feet thick and easily supported his weight.
I think it could hold at least 10 or 12 men. There's George and I discussing the reeds and how they were turned into a pontoon. They were very thick, the reeds, where you couldn't walk through them anyway.
To this day, both George and Albert remain convinced that extraterrestrials visited Tully and left the evidence in the reeds.
But what George saw a UFO take off from the lagoon, so I suspected it was a UFO that made the circle. And then you'd hear people saying, well, it could be caused by helicopters upside down, spoonbills tramping around and making a circle, or alligators mating, grabbing each other's tails and swinging around. Well, they're some of the questions that were put to me, yeah.
Every day of every summer, the circles are sought out by those who believe that the rings have special powers.
They come from around the world to the fields of Britain, as though drawn by a magnetism they can't resist. Dowsers, ley liners, communers with nature, all seeking forces they believe emanate from the depths of the earth.
And it brings the centre 7. And strangely, all the spirals and all the circles all have 7 coils.
Going along very slowly, using my hands as sensors for any energies. And I feel a tremendous tingle there, but it wasn't. It went off. So we're going on. Yes, they're tingling like mad there. I think we'll stop there, if you don't mind. And that one just shakes them off because those energies are very, very strong and really quite uncomfortable.
Okay, Lynn, your aura should have expanded by now, so we'll just see how far it's expanded. There we are, that's the difference.
In the 1930s, a teenage girl was missing her lessons. Kath Skin had been kept off school that summer with scarlet fever. One afternoon, she walked out into this field.
We've had enough.
She sat for a moment under the hedge. That day, too, was thundery. Kath Skin only revealed what she had seen when crop circles began appearing by the dozen half a century later.
It was a lovely, hot, sultry day. And, you know, sort of day like this today, as if there's a storm coming. But in front of me, there was this great big field of wheat. I was chewing a bit of wheat just as I am now. And all of a sudden, I saw a blessed great whirlwind right in the middle of the field. And it was throwing up stuff about 30, 40 feet up. And all of a sudden, it dissipated and all the stuff fell down to the ground. And I was fascinated by this. So it was amazing. There was a flattened corn, and I had sandals on, so I felt that the corn was ever so hot to my feet. And all around, you know how you have a pack of cards and they all fall against each other? Well, the corn was like that in a clockwise direction, and all the ears of corn were sort of intertwined all the way around, made a lovely sort of periphery. It could only be very strong pressure to press all the corn down so hard onto the ground, and in that particular pattern. It was all the letters in the paper about these marvellous circles appearing all over the country, and some were obviously man-made, and it's when they started off about aliens that I got annoyed, because I thought, well, I've seen the blooming thing made, so I know it's nothing to do with aliens and foreigners, and it would be interesting to know how they are formed, what makes it, whether it's an electric current, whether it's something actually in the ground that performs differently according to weather conditions. I don't know. But if you find out, you let me know.
This lady's story is especially valuable. It's one of only a handful of eyewitness accounts dating from before the 1980s. The earliest studies of such basic crop circles were made by meteorologists. They had no reason to suspect hoaxes and wondered if the phenomenon was caused by whirlwinds.
Dr. Terence Meaden investigates unusual weather phenomena. His reports come from people like farmer Tom Gwinnett. Tom says he too has seen a crop circle forming, but his experience was accompanied by eerie effects. His car cut out. There was a humming sound, and he saw sparks dancing in the air.
As I come back up the road, the headlights on the car and ignition, everything cut out. So I heard this humming sound coming from the opposite side of the road in one of our fields, and I just couldn't make out what it was. So I walked up and had a look, and it was only very low humming, like a singer-songwriter machine in the distance, more or less, you know. And it was here. There was like occasional small red sparks, not anything. You could just in the dim light, you could see these sparks. Well, the next morning I went round. I stopped at the gate, and there was a perfect circle in the field, corn circle. She was about 10 foot across. That was that.
For the meteorologist Terence Meaden, Tom Gwinnett's experience was the evidence he'd been looking for. Dr. Meaden believes that a rare combination of temperature and landscape can set up a very localized whirlwind or vortex, which spins till it drops, leaving a circle of flattened corn.
This is quite a perfect situation for circle formation in the sense that I predicted that they could happen. That is to say, there is a hill of some importance just there to the west, and the conditions being quiet that night, I'm sure that the hill itself provided the obstacle that made a lee vortex. I was very pleased to have Tom's telephone call telling me about his observations. Very few people have been fortunate enough to see this. And Tom is such a credible witness. He's a good countryman, a good observer, and has just no reason to court publicity at all. My theory does very well for the ordinary crop circles. Indeed, there's no competitor at all. No one else has come along with any other suggestion at all. If my theory is not right, what is it going to be? Is it going to be the fairies?
Within sight of York's ancient minster, agronomist Dr. John Graham has been called in to give his verdict on the latest crop circle. He's an expert on how cereal stalks bend and break, and he's travelled the length of Britain investigating the natural, the unnatural, and what some would claim is the supernatural.
Having had a look at everything around me here, looking at the nature of the damage to the plants in this circle, which is only a very approximate circle, and considering that we're on a very visible site next to a major main road, we're about half a mile away from an agricultural college, I think it's fairly likely that we've got a fairly routine hoax here. One of the things that I do look at, though, when I'm looking at a circle to see what I think has been going on, is to actually look at the precise nature of damage to the plants. And if we actually look at a plant from this circle here, you can see that the damage to it has occurred in the form of a very precise kink down at the base of the plant. That's usually indicative that a fairly major force has been applied to the plant and it's collapsed under the weight, and that would typically be occurred by somebody making a circle artificially. It's possible that this could have occurred naturally, but according to the wind tunnel test which I've done, you would need a wind speed in excess of 150 miles an hour to cause this damage. And in a normal English summer, that doesn't normally occur. If this damage had taken place naturally, I think we'd see something looking much more like this down here, where the plants have actually bent right over in the soil, and there is no actual mechanical damage to the plants themselves. That would indicate to me a far greater likelihood of a natural occurrence, whereas something like this is almost certainly as a result of a mechanical force applied by a human agent. I think the more important factor is what force is actually being applied to the plants in the first place. We've already talked about hoaxes, and the hand of mankind seems to rear itself very, very frequently.
Just to prove to you, Ollie, this is what we used to get up to at night. Now I'm going in here and I'm going to start making a circle for you.
Right. I'll be interested.
I'm sure you will. Now we used to lay the stick down there like that, look.
Artist Doug Bauer claims he was behind the first hoaxed crop circles in Britain. Unknown to his wife, he and a friend decided to try to fool people that UFOs were landing. All they needed to flatten the corn was a plank and a rope. To begin with, their designs were simple, but they soon progressed to ever more complicated patterns.